Hi, I'm Kenna Squires, and I'd like to talk a little bit today about what problems you might run into or what might be causing it if you're going by a barrel. And I'll address all three barrels to the best of my ability. First of all, precision really does matter, and that you do the same thing every time. If your horse is setting on his hind end and really working off his rear end, it shouldn't be any problem if you ride him all the way in the hole and then sit down. But if you're a little bit afraid that your horse is gonna not set, you need to have them handling before you run. If you have a horse that's pushing on you before you run, you're probably gonna be in trouble when you run them. Also, you have to literally sit up there and ask the horse to turn. You can't just sit down and expect that he's all of a sudden going to get it. He needs a little guidance. It's okay. And ask him to turn, and that ought to sure help. Now, the other way that you might run into trouble is if you're going a little faster than you probably thought you wanted to in the first place. I see this happen to a lot of people. They're not really watching any certain spot to try to run to sit down so they can cue their horse at the appropriate spot. So they'll sit down too early and get in one's head, and they're going to get too close. They're going to have to go by, and they're going to have to come back. And that right there, that's all about watching your spot, staying up here square, making sure that if you did grab the inside rein on a horse, they need to pick up. But it costs you time. The further back you are and the more you wrestle with a horse on getting too close or too far or slowing down, the more you wrestle with them with their reins, and if you don't have that worked out before you run them, that costs you time. I don't care if you set the track record from here to the eye. It just doesn't work. The smooth is fast, and smooth is fun. Woo. You ride them all the way up in here, you sit down and you ask them to work, and if they're handling and they're setting and they're working and you keep reminding them, they'll keep doing it the way you want to. Now the second barrel, most of the time, right here is what gets you by one. You come in right by there, and either somebody's reared back, which makes the horse want to climb a little bit or drop. And when you come in right here, how in the world do you expect for a horse that's running very fast to make that turn? They have to go by and come back, and sometimes the best case scenario is you hit it with your foot on the way by, but you can't do that every time. It's not staying square. If you can run them all the way up in the hole, right up here, ask them to sit down, ask them to turn, and there's a little bit, you've got to ask, if you're running by just because you forgot to ask them, a lot of times we're not used to the bigger pattern. Our horses, when we go to a big outdoor pen and we've been running in these pens, they're only used to running so many steps across that pen. You start asking them for about 3 more jumps and they got a whole lot more steam up than they usually do. So then, better put some set in them before you go get in a big pen and run them. And actually a little set, for me, never hurts anything. If they're running by or if they're dropping in, I'm reminding them, right here is where I want you to run, and you're not to commit to that turn until you get right up here, kind of where you belong. And your head needs to be up, your shoulder up, and using your rear. And the third barrel, a lot of horses build up a lot of steam and they're looking either further down the pen. Right now, my horse is looking for more horses. He's a colt, but they'll do that at a run, and if there's bleachers somewhere or panels that they can see people walking through, they'll watch the movement as opposed to watching for a barrel. They can get lost. They need us to guide them. And that third barrel, if you'll just, again, sit down, But if you rear back and pull on them, you're fixing to find out what that corner of the arena looks like, because they're going to go into your hand and launch off around there and make the big, well, that's where the hot dog stand is, and you'll end up getting a hot dog. If there's any way, you put a little set in them, you sit down and you ask them to turn, because there's no amount of making them turn at a run. It's just doesn't usually work that way. If it does, you got lucky.